At the third stroke, it will be 4:20 precisely.
Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the music of Marc Bonilla. That was from his brand new album, Celluloid Debris, which will be officially released on July 3rd, 2019. This is Marc's third appearance on the show. Back on episode 52, we spoke about his earlier solo albums and his work with the keyboard icon Keith Emerson. Then on episode 53, we spoke about his work with California Transit Authority. So anyone interested in those topics is strongly encouraged to go back and check out those episodes, because today we're going to focus primarily on the new album. And to that end, joining me on the Skype from Los Angeles, California, is Marc Bonilla. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's good to be here. It's hot out here too, man. So we're the only, you're not the only one having to deal with the no air conditioning situation.
Yeah, I know. I spend a bit of time out your way too.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you giving me early access to the new tracks. Previewing them was an exciting and rewarding listening experience. But before we get to our main event, there are a few things I want to touch on first. Last time you were here, I knew about your involvement with the show Justified, but I hadn't seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
And now I've watched the entire series, all 6 seasons of it, and I have to say, just above and beyond the general enjoyment of the show, there's definitely some noticeably sweet guitar playing on that soundtrack. I was watching the show because I knew that you and Steve Porcaro did the music, and then I'd sort of get wrapped up in the story and I'd forget about the music, and then the guitar would come and go, oh, Marc Bonilla's guitar. And not only was your presence felt musically, but you and Steve also appeared on screen as church musicians. Did you fly to Kentucky for that, or was that shot in LA?
No, we didn't. We had a talk about now that just the opposite of that. We were freezing our butts off up in north of here, just right up the street, basically in Castaic area. That's where the whole set was up there for this particular scene. And we were doing that. It's supposed to be the middle of summer, right? We're supposed to have our shirts off and all that, but it was in the dead of like November. It was freezing up there, and we were there all night. It was an all-night shoot, and basically you're standing around for most of the time. Your action's only maybe 15% of the time that you're actually there. The rest of the time is you're standing around waiting for lighting and waiting for all this other stuff that's going on. And then your fingers are completely frozen by then, because there's been no movement at all. So it was quite a challenge, and we had to look like we were not cold. And so I deserve an Oscar for that one.
I'll give you what's the word? Not unofficial, but honorary.
Honorary.
The honorary Oscar for that. Well, I said you guys were church musicians. You didn't even catch a break there, because it wasn't like a traditional indoor church. It was like a tent revival.
Certainly was, yes.
It's like a literally snake handling cult.
Right. That's exactly what it was.
Well, I just watching the episode, and then there's you. Of course, you play lefty style, so that removes any doubt if it's you or not. And then Steve, and you guys honestly didn't look super comfortable, but
no,
I don't know that I'd be comfortable watching people, whipping snakes around and doing
that.
Yeah,
well, the crew was great, and all the actors are great, and Walton Goggins and Timmy are great guys, and they're big music fans, and the showrunner Graham Yost is a huge prog fan, and he and his brother at one point Stevie called me down. He says, "Hey man, look, Graham's going to be in town. His brother's coming in from Canada. Do you think you could call Keith and maybe we could go out to dinner? I know they would love that." So I did. I called Keith and he said, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem." So we went out to dinner, and here's a guy who's like a big major player in Hollywood, right? A lot of people look up to him, and he's very successful and very well thought of, and here he is at the table with, sitting there with his brother and with like his hands in between his legs going, "So, Keith, like, when you did that solo in like Lucky Man," he was like Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney. It was great to see him as a fanboy, because he was a major prog fan. I mean, he knows all the Gentle Giant stuff, all the King Crimson stuff. He's a complete prog nerd like the rest of us. So coming into the show, he already knew who I was and said, "God, that's great." And actually, we got Keith to play a piece on the show. If you listen to, it's the last cue where they're escaping from Harlan on a train, the coal train, so to speak. And that was Keith playing piano on that. So we just thought it would be a cool little thank you for Graham. And I had Keith sneak in here and actually play it. So he's actually on the soundtrack, and Graham let us have full carte blanche with the music. He ran interference with the networks, said, "You guys keep doing what you're doing. All I hear is great stuff about the music, so there ain't nothing that needs to be fixed." And it was such a joy to work with him, and we've become friends, since that, and hopefully we'll work together again.
Yeah, I'm sure that everybody involved with the show appreciated the quality of the music. But it's funny when you said that Chris Farley, I just imagined the guy going, "Remember when you were in Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
Exactly.
That was awesome."
It was so funny to see him in that way, because, he was just reverting right back to high school when he saw ELP tour, and it was great. I loved, and we closed the place down. I mean, no one else was there. I mean, the waiters were in pajamas, flashing the lights on and off, like, take a hint, because there was no one else there. We just talked all night there, about prog music and all this other stuff. So it was a great night, very, very memorable. Well,
Justified premiered in 2010, and then it concluded in 2015. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a cool show. Even if you have seen it, I recommend going back and doing a rewatch, incorporate some guitar spotting into that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is the work you've done live on stage with Spinal Tap bassist Derek Smalls. Was our friend C.J. Vanston the catalyst for that?
Oh, yeah. He was the one that asked me to come aboard on that. And I immediately said, of course I will. I mean, the opportunity to play Stonehenge on a mandolin, I couldn't turn that down now, could I? So I did. I was playing, there were sans the dwarves, but it was great. It was like, I can't believe I'm actually playing Stonehenge. And the album Small's Change rather, is a great record. I don't know if you've heard it or not. CJ produced it. Harry and them wrote the songs. It's got a lot of great guest stars on it. Dweezil's on it. Luke, Steve Vai, Paul Schaefer. A lot of great people are on it. And it's excellent music. I mean, it's really well thought out, well orchestrated, well produced, and it's an absolute joy to play. And they give me basically full reign on what I want to do around it, and and Harry is an absolute pleasure to work with, and the sweetest guy on the planet, just an upstanding human being. And CJ is brilliant as always. He and I get along great. We both share a profound love for Keith, and we're both close to him. Mm-hmm. So it's like a family, very much like a family.
Yeah, it's a great album. I'm very familiar with it, and I've had Derek booked twice to be on the show, date and time, and he gets so busy that he had to pull out. I'm still hoping to have him on. Judith, his wife Judith, has been on the show a couple times. She's awesome too. But yeah, it's very, very, very good. I understand why he's still promoting it and trying to keep it alive, because people need to hear it. It's good.
Well, yeah, we filmed it. We're here at the Hollywood Theater in Los Angeles, and we brought in the remote trucks and did a massive shoot on it, which we'll be editing shortly. And we're also in the process of there may be some shows coming up here, so we're kind of waiting to see how that leads. But it looks pretty promising, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I couldn't wait to get back out with them, because it's just fun to play. It's fun to play that stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. I know when CJ first had a chance, I think it was Russ Kunkel who got him. It was going to be a one-time show with Spinal Tap, and CJ said once he had his toe in the door, he said, "I'm going to be the musical director for these guys. I'm going to be so invaluable that they'll never want to replace me." And it's exactly what happened.
And that's exactly what he is.
Yep.
He's incredible at everything that he does, So
There's a clip on YouTube that has you on stage with Dweezil Zappa, Steve Lukather, and Steve Vai. You guys are all playing bass because you're doing Big Bottom, but still, talk about lead guitar overkill. Can you imagine a band that had you, Lukather, Steve Vai, and Dweezil Zappa in it?
Well, it was funny because Vi ended up taking the solo on that, and he's going at the end of it. It was either at the end of it, or the middle of it. He goes, "Damn, this is hard." Trying to bend bass notes like I'm used to playing on the, there's no wobble arm, man, So he was really earning his bread, that night, doing it. But we were just, it was just fun playing that. We were all playing a little bit differently, and filling it in. But yeah, it's just, thing is, we're all such big fans of Harry and Spinal Tap and all that. It was just, we were all thinking the same thing. It's like, this is just cool. That we're up here playing Big Bottom, like with all these basses. It was great.
When that movie came out, This is Spinal Tap, I was in, a regularly working metal band. It was like so relatable.
Oh my God, it was painful to watch, wasn't it? It was just like, oh God, I remember that. You knew every date that, something like that blew up on the pad,
I think the thing that really made me love it all the more, apart from all the comedies, the fact that those guys all played. They weren't like a lot of the movies with, you have somebody playing Charlie Parker or somebody playing Jimi Hendrix, and the actor really can't play or can't play that well, and you see that all the time. They were like writing the songs, playing the songs, and that added a layer of authenticity to it that just really, just put it over the top in terms of making it a classic.
Plus, most of it was improvised, so you really did feel, unless you knew who those guys were, it was like, is this this is a real band? I don't remember these guys, kind of thing. It was because it was so realistic because they were just coming up with it like you were just a fly on the wall. Rob Ryder was just happened to be there filming. So
yeah, that's a good point too. And if anybody sees one of like the anniversary editions, there's tons of outtakes and scenes that they didn't use. There's like a whole nother movie. It's like literally almost an hour of it, other scenes and stuff.
Oh, there's clearly, I think on the Laserdisc, which I have, there's like almost 90 minutes of footage and equally as funny. They just couldn't put it into a 3-hour film. You got Bruno Kirby singing into a pizza crust, and just some hysterical stuff that I was laughing so hard at that scene that my wife came in the first time and says, "Are you okay?" She thought I was having a nervous breakdown because I couldn't stop laughing. I was crying. I was hysterical because it was so damn funny. And it really struck me at that right moment. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop laughing. She was concerned. She actually thought, that I was losing it.
It's like experiencing the movie again. There's a whole story they did where after Nigel left, they replaced him with another lead guitar. And the guy was really good looking and all the women were paying attention to him and everybody in the band was jealous of the guy. Yeah. That was a funny one. Also, they had one where a band opened for them and they were a terrible fit. They weren't a good choice for opening band at all, but they all thought the singer was hot. They all wanted to go after the girl singer. And there was a whole story with that. So, as I said, it was the Criterion or the anniversary or something. Go find all the bonus footage of Spinal Tap.
Well worth it, yeah.
Well, I didn't expect to go all those places, but I know you have other irons in the fire, but those are the ones I just wanted to mention, Justified and Derek Smalls. But now let's get on to the really important thing here. In preparation for this discussion of your third solo album, I went back, I listened to Double E Ticket, straight into American Matador, straight into the new one, just to sort of track any evolutionary threads. They all feel very connected to each other, and I have no doubt that this new one is going to please the Marc Bonilla fan base. What is the significance of that title, Celluloid Debris?
Well, it's been 25 years since I did Matador. Mm-hmm. And the reason that was because I didn't want to do another album, guitar instrumental album at the time. I wanted to explore whatever the capabilities I had to go into other fields. So one of them primarily was soundtrack writing. And I was working a lot with James Newton Howard at the time. And he had given me several opportunities to put my input in here and there. And then that led to other things. And pretty soon I was doing a lot of scoring, TV and film stuff, and basically kind of hung the guitar on the wall unless I was playing it, for a soundtrack ambience or whatever. I wasn't really doing much. And it wasn't until Troy Luccketta had asked me to if I could do a Music Minus One hit and run off of a double E ticket for his drum clinic. And I said, sure. And then I went back and tried to learn that damn thing again. It was kicking my butt, and it was like, man, have I lost it? I was really concerned. I think I may have lost my abilities here to be like that. So I swore I'd never do that again, and ended up forming a band called Seville Row at the time with Troy and Travis Davis and Micah Griner. And we did some great alt rock stuff and got me kind of back into songwriting and playing. And then at that point, I got involved with Keith, and the rest, kind of figured itself out. But it had been 25 years in that stretch between now and then. And I figured, about 2 years ago when I actually started this project, I thought, okay, now it's time. I have enough to draw from the last 25 years, playing with all these different players that I played with, all these different situations that I've been lucky enough to find myself in, whether I merited it or not. Playing with CTA and arranging for brass, going over to Munich and Mongolia and Birmingham and playing and composing for the symphony. All of that stuff, I said, okay, I'm going to pull from all of those sources that I've learned from and put together a different type of an album. And the reason for Celluloid Debris is the fact that, it's kind of a soundtrack of my last 25 years on the planet musically. Hence the term celluloid being what film is made from. And then debris obviously kind of explains itself. It's stuff that was just scattered everywhere that I've kind of absorbed from one area or another. So that's basically how the title came about.
And how would you connect that with the cover art? The cover art is very colorful and abstract. Was that your own creation?
No, actually, that was I was fortunate enough to get the consent of Vladimir Sokolov, who was a very, very well-renowned artist he had a gallery in Laguna Beach, and my parents, being artists, were very, very close to them, and so he would do these collages. And what if you study it? It's hard unless you see the actual work in person. But he'll take pictures from different sources, photographs, magazines, whatever, and put them into these collages, these amazing collages, going whichever direction. And you can start to see pictures within the collage because he'll spread them out so they're not continuous, but you can start to notice certain patterns in there. And I was really taken by this one called Lepus, which is the one that's on the cover. And it kind of reminded me of celluloid, and like strips of film, but at the same time guitar strings. And they're kind of going in all different types of directions. And I asked him, I said, would you ever think about maybe granting me permission to use this? And he said, oh, God, go ahead. Yes, absolutely. And he gave me a photograph of the painting, so I used it. And it was very, very fortunate to be able to do that with this consent. I mean, I've been lucky in that way because there's always been a personal touch on the cover. My father did the first the double E ticket background. He did an abstract painting back there for me for that. The second album, American Matador, I was in Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and they had the original painting of El Jaleo by John Singer Sargent, which is what graces that cover. And I was just taken by it. I couldn't stop looking at it. So I'd called the Isabella Stewart Museum in Boston, who's where they usually house the painting, and said, would you ever consider maybe granting permission or whatever I have to pay to use this? Because I said I'd written American Matador after seeing that painting. And so they said, send us, we'd like to hear it. So I did, and they came back, and they'd taken it out of the actual frame and photographed it for me. Wow. Then sent me that and said, it'll cost $1, And I was like, I couldn't get $1 out fast enough. And so they gave it to me for that, and then Sokolov now with this one. So I've been very, very blessed and lucky to be able to feature something of that magnitude on the cover.
That sounds like a bit of serendipity that you saw that artwork that meshed so well with your concept. for the album. And the story you just told about the $1 and they wanted to hear it first, that reminds me so much of the story Keith told about Aaron Copland and Fanfare for the Common Man. It's like he wanted to hear it first, and there was the whole thing that went on. Yeah, I understand their point of view. They're not opposed to the idea of someone using it. They just don't know you. They want to know if you're good or not. Right. And then they hear the music and, oh, this guy's legit. That's fine. So that makes sense. But, I know you have some skill in that area yourself. In fact, throughout your career, you've worn a lot of hats, as we know from the previous interviews. You're a master guitar player, you're a seasoned producer, you're a talented vocalist. But I was thinking, as I was preparing for this and listening to that stuff, really at this point, I primarily think of you as a composer. Not just because you did your 2 solo albums and then got into film composition, but even on your solo albums, particularly this one, it strikes me as the work of someone focusing on the big picture in all the elements, the music as a whole. Not like, I'm a guitar player, let's take care of that, and we'll give a tiny bit of attention to everything else. I mean, the engineering, the mastering, the mixing, sort of like when Jimmy Page did Led Zeppelin. If he would have been an egomaniac, he would have had John Paul Jones and John Bonham down. He wanted everybody to shine,
With this particular project, and I'm glad that you recognize that, I've always, the whole thing, when you start out in music, and what this goes actually with any kind of art, is that it all comes down to one thing. What it comes down to is storytelling, telling a good story. Now that can be, through a script, could be through painting, could be through dance, any of these things. I happen to chose, or it chose me, doing it through music. And in order to do that, you have to understand that in music, storytelling is subject to punctuation, and your notes are your letters are your notes, and your chords are your words, and you have to formulate these things and build these things into a cohesive narrative so that it makes sense to somebody that's listening. It progresses, it climaxes, it has thematic development, it has compositional heft, to whatever degree, and that any musician who's playing it is always going to be, or should be, the servant to that. You should never have a piece of music where it's your ego that's being served, but rather you are the servant of that music. And I've tried to keep that in mind the whole time here of writing, especially this album, because I'm not doing a lot of what other people would consider soloing on it. There's 1,000 guitar parts. I actually maxed out Ryan Green's Pro Tools at 160 tracks on one song, because I've treated it differently. What I've gone and done here, and this is again being party to learning by composing for symphony, and my conductor that I work with, Toddy Mikkelsen, is a very renowned conductor from Norway, has really changed my playing style and really showed me how to approach playing in a classical fashion, in an acoustic fashion, by inner dynamics and fluctuations and all these things I didn't think were possible that I learned on the Three Fates project. And I employed those here by using the guitar more or less as an orchestra, where you have 160 pieces or whatever you have. Maybe you have 63 pieces, but they're not all playing at the same time. They don't all have the same timbre. And a lot of times you combine timbres. You combine, a saxophone with a flute, or, whatever it happens to be, a piano with a harp, to get a hybrid tone. And this is what I've done all the way through this record, is there's millions of tones going in and out, not for the sake of that, but for the sake of the progression of the narrative, whatever I'm, talking about, whatever the subject matter is of the song, there's a reason for all of that to exist. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I've approached this, is very, very heavy on composition. Yeah, there's some shredding going on in there, but only to the point that it serves the song, not that it serves me, because I actually get a little bit bored wanking too long on something. I tend to have a short attention span and kind of want to move on with things. I'm not this guy that will take a half an hour solo. It just doesn't make sense to me,
Well, you had mentioned there was a 25-year gap between album 2 and album 3, and that's what I was listening for. So I said the evolution, everything you just said, sort of some of the things you've learned over the last 25 years, but it didn't take you so far away that this album sounds like completely left field to the other two, but it does show subtleties, let's say subtleties, because I was noticing all the guitar layering, and it never sounds cluttered, which I'm sure is the challenge. It always, the parts, they belong there. It's not like, well, there's too much going on. And it's done tastefully, and it, like I said, you didn't rush yourself, and you put a lot of thought into it. And, people are going to hear a little bit of the music as we go along, but you really need to hear the whole album from start to finish to really get a sense of what Marc just described. We're recording this prior to the release, so while I do have access to the audio content, I don't have liner notes, and so in terms of personnel, I'm counting on you to sort of fill us in as we go along. But
Yep.
One direct tie to your first album, Double E Ticket, is your use of these spoken word segues between the tracks. There was a lot of that on the first album, and there's a lot of that on this one, which I enjoy. Why did you want to return to that concept and format?
Well, I think there are a couple of reasons. One, I enjoy that. I think it brings a human element to the record, because there's only one vocal song on the record. The rest of it is instrumental. And this brings you kind of in touch with humans, even if it's a short voice thing. It kind of connects you that way. Mm-hmm. So the second reason is because all of those have a meaning. They're not, obviously, they may not be evident to the listener that doesn't know the history of stuff that I've done, but I had a friend of mine, actually still do. It was my oldest and dearest friend. His name was Jim Gammon, and he was blind since birth. And he was one of these kids that never let his handicap be a handicap. It wasn't a handicap for him. He, the first time I met him, he had his tricycle at the top of the hill, and he was flying down the street with he'd pedal and then he'd lift his feet up and he would go right into his driveway each time. And so I didn't, and then I found out he was blind, and I went, Jimmy, you have no eyes. How do you do that? You go in there, and he goes, oh, I count the clicks in the sidewalk. And it was because, when you lay sidewalk, at least back then, you had these wooden forms, and when you pulled the forms out, that made a little gap, and when a tubeless tire from a tricycle went across, it went gadink, 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 gadink as it went down. He counted all of those. So he found a method to coexist in the world without having to see. Mm-hmm. And he did this all through his life. We were, the neighborhood kids, we never treated him like he was blind. You didn't have to. He had acute hearing. And a great thing about him, he figured so prominently in my life, is because he was the first to get every dang record that ever came out. I got turned on to ELP, yes, Mahavishnu, Miles Davis, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, every album, he had it. Because that was his whole world, was sound. And, there's tapes of us in his bedroom down in the basement where he had his recording gear. And I've got some stuff with me when I'm like 9-10 years old of doing multiple recordings and stuff. And he would always be taping our entire lives, whether we were walking across the street, doing something, lighting off firecrackers, busting picture tubes, didn't matter what it was, we recorded everything. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what's on those segs are taken from my childhood tapes that were some way figurative in that input coming in, and they also set up the next track that that will follow it. So there's some significance there. So it's just stuff that no one's going to be expecting. That's like, wow, what is that? Like collages of basically elements of my life, in one area or not, even if it's in for a split second and out again.
Yeah, it adds another dimension to the music, and it's good that if it isn't too on the nose, if it's a little, makes you have to sort of think about it. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you can assign, a lot of times, like any film or any book, you can assign a lot of your own meaning to it depending on what your personal experiences have been. Mm-hmm. So the art has to be somewhat, malleable in that way that you can take it for what it's worth. When you hear Close to the Edge, you have a different mental picture in your mind than when I hear it. Things like that. And both of ours are legitimate to ourselves and no less legitimate than either one of us. That's the beauty of music. That's why I don't like videos, because they force you to look at a particular concept. And I went like, no, that's not what I think about when I listen to this song. I'd rather just have the pictures in my mind.
That's more or less what Donald Fagen said when they started putting pressure to do videos. He goes, well, people have different pictures in their head. Now you've sort of given them one.
Right.
And it's sort of become the quote unquote official one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.